My friends and I were looking for a new and exciting place to go out for dinner, so we decided to try a remote restaurant that we had heard about online. The restaurant was located in a secluded area, surrounded by dense forest. The building was old and decrepit, but it had a certain charm to it. We arrived at the restaurant and were greeted by the owner, a tall, thin man with a pale complexion and piercing black eyes. He led us to a table in the back of the restaurant, where we were served by a group of silent, expressionless waiters. The menu was limited, but the dishes that we ordered were delicious. The steak was cooked to perfection, and the seafood was fresh and flavorful. We were all enjoying our meal, until we started to notice strange things happening around us. The waiters would move around the restaurant in perfect synchronization, as if they were choreographed. They would never speak to us, and they would only make eye contact with us briefly. We also started to hear strange noises coming from the kitchen. It sounded like someone was moaning or crying. We ignored the noises at first, but they became more and more disturbing. Finally, one of my friends, Sarah, got up and went to investigate the noises coming from the kitchen. She didn't come back for a while, so we went to look for her. We found Sarah standing in the kitchen doorway, staring inside. She was pale and shaking. "What's wrong?" we asked. Sarah didn't answer. She just pointed into the kitchen. We followed her gaze and saw a group of people huddled together in the corner of the kitchen. They were all wearing the same black uniforms as the waiters, but their faces were hidden in the shadows. "What are they doing?" I asked. Sarah shook her head. "I don't know," she said, "but it doesn't look good." We decided to leave the restaurant, but when we tried to open the front door, it was locked. We tried all of the other doors, but they were all locked as well. We were trapped. We started to panic. We ran around the restaurant searching for a way out, but there was none. Suddenly the lights went out. We were plunged into darkness. We could hear the waiters moving around the restaurant, but we couldn't see them. We could hear them whispering, but we couldn't understand what they were saying. We huddled together in the darkness, terrified. We didn't know what to do. Suddenly, we heard a loud crash. It sounded like something had fallen over in the kitchen. We could hear the waiters running toward the kitchen. We knew that we had to get out of there. We ran towards the front door and started banging on it. "Help!" we screamed. "Someone help us!" But no one came. We were trapped inside the restaurant with the waiters. We could hear the waiters getting closer. We backed away from the door, terrified. The waiters surrounded us. They were all staring at us with their cold, dead eyes. We knew that we were going to die. Suddenly, a bright light filled the room. The waiters disappeared. We looked around and saw that we were no longer in the restaurant. We were standing in the middle of a forest. We didn't know how we had gotten there, but we were grateful to be alive. We ran through the forest until we reached the road. We flagged down a passing car and asked for help. The driver took us to the nearest police station. We told the police what had happened, but they didn't believe us. They said that there was no restaurant in the area where we had described it. We knew that we were telling the truth, but we couldn't prove it. We went back to the spot where the restaurant had been, but it was gone. There was no sign that it had ever been there. We never saw the restaurant again, and we never saw the waiters again. But we still have nightmares about them. We know that they're out there somewhere, waiting for their next victims.
Next story.
I'm a food critic, and I've been to some of the best restaurants in the world, but none of them prepared me for what I experienced at the restaurant called the Lost Supper. I had heard rumors about the restaurant, but I didn't take them seriously. People said that the food was so delicious that it was addictive, and that the chef was a mad genius. I decided to check it out for myself. I arrived at the restaurant late one night. It was located in a secluded part of town, and the building was old and decrepit. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I tried the doorknob and it turned. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The restaurant was dark and empty. There were only a few candles lit on the tables. I walked up to the front desk and saw a bell. I rang the bell, and a moment later, a man appeared from the kitchen. The man was tall and thin, with a pale complexion and piercing black eyes. He wore a long white chef's coat. "Welcome to the Lost Supper," he said in a raspy voice. "I am the chef." "I'm a food critic," I said. "I've come to try your food." The chef smiled. "I'm honored," he said. "Please have a seat." The chef led me to a table in the back of the restaurant. He handed me a menu and told me to take my time. The menu was limited, but the dishes sounded delicious. I ordered the steak and a glass of red wine. A few minutes later, the chef returned with my food. The steak was cooked to perfection and it smelled amazing. I took a bite of the steak and my eyes widened in surprise. It was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. I finished my steak in no time, and I ordered another one. I also ordered a second glass of wine. I was so focused on the steak that I didn't notice the strange things happening around me. The chef would move around the kitchen in perfect synchronization, as if he were choreographed. He would never speak to me, and he would only make eye contact with me briefly. I also started to hear strange noises coming from the kitchen. It sounded like someone was moaning or crying. I ignored the noises at first, but they became more and more disturbing. Finally, I decided to investigate. I got up from my table and walked towards the kitchen. The chef saw me coming and blocked my way. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I'm just going to see what's making that noise," I said. "There is no noise," the chef said. "You must be imagining things." I pushed past the chef and entered the kitchen. The kitchen was dark and empty. There was no sign of anyone else there. I turned around to go back to my table, but the chef was gone. I started to walk through the kitchen, searching for a way out, but all of the doors were locked. I was trapped. I started to panic. I ran around the kitchen, searching for a way out, but there was none. Suddenly the lights went out. I was plunged into darkness. I could hear the chef moving around the kitchen, but I couldn't see him. I could hear him whispering, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. I huddled together in the darkness, terrified. I didn't know what to do. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash. It sounded like something had fallen over in the kitchen. I heard the chef running towards the crash. I knew that I had to get out of there. I ran towards the door and started banging on it. "Help!" I screamed. "Someone help me!" But no one came. I was trapped inside the restaurant with the chef. I could hear the chef getting closer. I backed away from the door, terrified. The chef appeared in front of me. He was holding a knife in his hand. "You're not leaving," he said. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. The chef smiled. "Because I'm hungry," he said. The chef lunged at me with the knife. I ducked out of the way, but he was too fast. He slashed at my arm. I cried out in pain as the chef's knife cut through my arm. I tried to run, but he grabbed me by the back of the neck and held me in place. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed. "You're mine now." The chef dragged me to the back of the kitchen and threw me on the ground. He stood over me, holding the knife to my throat. "I'm going to make you pay for what you did," he said. I closed my eyes and waited for the end, but the end never came. Instead, I heard a loud crash. I opened my eyes and saw that the chef had been knocked to the ground. A woman was standing over him holding a baseball bat. "Leave him alone," she said. The chef looked up at the woman and snarled. "Get out of the way," he said. The woman raised the baseball bat. "I said leave him alone," she repeated. The chef hesitated for a moment, then he turned and ran out of the kitchen. The woman helped me to my feet. She examined my arm. "It's not too bad," she said, "but you need to get to a hospital." I nodded. I was too weak to speak. The woman helped me out of the kitchen and through the restaurant. She led me outside and helped me into her car. She drove me to the nearest hospital. I was treated for my injuries and released a few hours later. I never saw the woman again, but I'm grateful to her for saving my life. I still have nightmares about the chef and the restaurant, but I know that I'm lucky to be alive. I'm also more careful about where I eat now.
As a huge support, please hit like, subscribe, and maybe share your thought or any experience before going to watch another video. Thank you so much. Have a good day or night, whatever.